Hello, everyone. Welcome to a frightening episode of ARG Presents. I am Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who was rated not appropriate for general audiences. I give you the horror that is the Brent.
I think of myself more as AO, adults only.
Oh my, well, too rich for me, pal. So, if you joined us last week, we spun the wheel and we made the deal, the frightening deal. And this week, we'll be looking at games made by the arcade manufacturer Exidy.
Yes.
Now, Brent, what do you know about Exidy?
Well, last week, I knew they were a computer or console maker, and then this week, I found out they were a publisher and developer.
Yes. We both had brain spasms last week.
Yes.
We just assumed that the Exidy was some weird computer from Europe.
Yeah, that someone just happened to bring up and put on the wheel.
Incorrect. So this week we've done our homework. We're going to learn a little something about Exidy, Brent. So let's settle in. So Exidy, in case you've never heard of them, oh, by the way, they're one of the largest creators of arcade machines from the 70s to the 80s.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
And we knew that. That's what makes me sick. The company was founded by a fellow named H.R. Pete Kaufman. And I found something interesting out. Exidy, Brent, is a portmanteau or a portmanteau. You know what that means?
It's when you drive a boat into a port, right?
That's right. That's not right.
No.
No. It's when you smush some words together to make some kind of wacky third word.
Well,
in this case, Exidy is a portmanteau of excellence in dynamics. Pretty cool.
I don't like them anymore.
I don't know what that means. Excellence in dynamics? Yeah. Dynamics of what?
I don't like them anymore. They're done. Off the Christmas card list.
So, Exidy was around. You heard us right. They were around for about 12 years, Brent.
Yeah, beginning in the, late 70s, right? Mid-70s?
Late 74 to 86.
Nah.
So, Exidy was sort of the second banana to Atari for much of its existence. And it seems like they pretty much tried to play catch-up for 12 years before they finally, flamed out. Really, it's a little bit longer than that. But so, Exidy kind of made an early bang with a game called Death Race.
Yes.
Death Race, released April 1st, 1976, was sort of when Exidy became sort of a more well-known company.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons.
Yes, it's because this is a game where you drive a car around and run over people.
Yes.
It is a legitimate death race.
Yeah, very controversial back in the late 70s.
If you'll recall, there was a movie called Death Race
2000. Yeah.
It had David Carradine and Sylvester Stallone and a horde of other talents as they drove around and ran over people. It was very tongue-in-cheek and dopey. But Death Race was much more black and white. In this case, literally, as you ran over basically like stick figures they were very small, nondescript humans.
And it's what's very odd is that was a controversy back in the late 70s. And then again, when Carmageddon came out, it was controversial again. And then in the GTA era, controversial there.
Listen,
running over people, very controversial,
but very fun.
Wow.
But amazingly, Death Race sort of had a small part to play in the overall rise and fall of Exidy, which we'll touch base on later on down the line. So Exidy had an interesting dilemma or quandary in the early 80s. They used to basically milk their hardware until the milk was done run dry.
Yes.
And so what did they do? They innovated. And now give them credit. They came out with a series of light gun games.
Yes.
Now, for whatever reason, all these games began with a C.
Well, that was they got the C series, except for the last one.
Yeah, it's wacky. But you had, amongst this series, you had Cheyenne, Combat, Crackshot, Clay Pigeon, Chiller, and Crossbow. And I'd say Crossbow is probably their most famous title, wouldn't you agree?
I would say, yeah.
Unless you're going to talk about Death Race, which was famous for different reasons. They also put together an interesting game. It was a driving game called Top Secret, which I've actually played that one. I've hardly seen any of these in arcade. I mean, I saw Cheyenne, Crossbow in the arcade, but pretty much not so many of the other ones.
I actually played Whodunit in the arcade.
Oh, you're really no kidding. Now, I saw a couple more. So just to run down a few of their big hits or misses, depending on how you look at it. Again, the first title they released was called Alley Rally in '75. We touched on Death Race. They released a game that gained some notoriety called Circus in '77.
Oh yeah, Circus is a big game.
Ripcord in '79, which I played.
Great game.
Yeah,
one of my personal favorites from them.
Really?
Yes.
Starfire, which was I remember playing that. And that is another one that I've seen arcade pictures of, but I never saw it in an actual arcade. Tail Gunner 2, which they actually bought that one from Cinematronic.
Yep.
And then they started a string of hits. Starting with Targ in '80. Then you had in '81, they had a heck of a year with Mousetrap and Venture.
Yep.
'82 was Pepper. So you had some real big hits right there. And then '83, here comes Crossbow. Then you had Crossbow Cheyenne. We're just right down the line through the '80s. You had all their big, light gun games.
Ain't broke, don't fix it kind of affair.
Well, yeah, and they weren't changing for nothing. Something those games were known for, by the way, was the excellent digitized sound.
Incredible. Yeah.
It made the game a lot more fun.
Well, it was the first ones to have it, too.
They were, amongst the first ones, and they were very clear. It wasn't what you would expect. They closed the show in the late 80s with Hit or Miss, Showdown, Whodunit, and Yukon. I believe they had been bought before those were even...
that was beyond when they were actually doing anything major.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now... To their credit, in 2007, the MAME website folks, this is the Multiple Arcade Machine Emulation crew. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would probably know what MAME is.
Absolutely.
They announced that H.R. Kaufman had released games from Exidy to be downloadable for free. Yep. He basically gave them away to be downloaded for free. And the ones that were released at the time, after they all added up, were Circus, Teeter Torture, Robot Bowl, Car Polo, Sidetrack, Ripcord, Fire 1, Crash, Starfire, an upgraded release to Starfire called Starfire 2, Targ, Spectre, Hard Hat, Victory, Fax, and Top Gunner.
Yeah, it was mostly their early games, but they completely eliminated that gray area of ROMs, whether if you own a different version, can you still play the arcade version, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And just said, hey, these are yours now. They belong to history, and I think that's the excellent thing for companies to do. It's not like they're going to do anything else with these properties. Just give them back to the people.
Especially properties that old. They really have a lot of the properties where have little to no value now, but you never know. People still like to play that stuff occasionally. But
it's nice. It's nice to be able to give that to the public that helped make you a company when you were young.
And it does happen occasionally. Like a lot of the Vectrix library was released at the public domain, which again, what are you going to do with that stuff for the most part? So. So Exidy being the number, I'm not going to call them number 2, but they were a player in that early. They
were competitive in the early arcade era.
A lot of their games gained a huge chunk of notoriety on home ports, including the one, and I'm going to start the show today, the one that I'm covering, which a lot of people probably played this for the first time on the ColecoVision, Brent. I would guess. So I took a look at the vast library here, and I was like, what can I play here that I at least have some semblance of an idea of what it is, and something that I could emulate pretty easily. And so what I went ahead and chose was Venture. Now, Venture was basically a D&D style game. I guess the best way to describe it was a top-down action dungeon crawler.
Yes.
All right.
I think that's very fair.
You play basically a happy face with a crossbow.
Which is unfortunate.
Well, it is. His name's Winky. Winky the Dungeoneer, who sets forth to conquer these dungeons by grabbing all the treasure. The Winky is, like I said, represented by just a smiley face with a crossbow coming out of his basically a smiley-faced head.
Yeah, no arms at all.
No arms, nothing. He's just a happy-go-lucky smiley face. Which is funny because really that's the only kind of stupid part of this game. The rest of it's taken pretty seriously. So you are deposited after a treasure screen, which is empty when you start. You are deposited in a dungeon, and the dungeon, you're in a sort of a high above dungeon view, and you see the outlines of some rooms, and you also see some critters roaming the halls of these rooms. These are called hall monsters. Your job is to go into each of these rooms and collect the treasure that lies therein. So on the map board, which is a playable area where you can be killed, you must navigate your way to one of the doors of one of these rooms. It doesn't really matter which room you go to, as long as it's not filled in. It's an open room you can go in.
You haven't visited before.
That's right, and you can go in any door you want. Once you get in the door, you are treated to a close-up view of that room. In that room, you will find either monsters or traps. And your job, and you will always find a treasure. And your job is to go and collect the treasure without getting touched by one of the bad guys. You can shoot these guys with your crossbow, your bow and arrow, whatever it is. And when you hit them, unlike in some games where they would just kind of pop out of existence, in this they lay down and they die, but they linger. They linger for a while as they sort of disintegrate. And as they're disintegrating, if you touch them, they'll kill you. You know what it reminds me of, dude, is you ever seen the scene with Medusa where she gets her head chopped off, Clash of the Titans, and she dies, but like venom and crud streams out of her. That's right. It's all these guys are like Medusa. They're all nasty when they die. The biohazard.
I think that's fair. Minus the skeletons that are full of nothing, but will still kill you.
They still kill you.
They're diseased.
That plague. Yeah, that's right. It's plague. So anyway, once you navigate around these monsters or shoot them, and you can go collect the treasure, and then you can exit any way you want. There are often multiple doors. Sometimes the doors will lead to other rooms, and most of the time they lead you back out into the hall.
Right.
Now, that's easy enough, right?
No,
they can't. That's too easy, brother. So the hall monsters get a little antsy if you're not out there in the hall. They want to get them some, and so if you take too long in the room, the hall monsters will come in and try to get you. The hall monsters can't be killed. No. All you can do is run. They're very similar to Evil Otto in Berserk. When you see him, you're toast, and these guys are this exact same way. Now, once you complete the room, you're back in the hallway, and you can navigate your way to another room. When you finish a room, it fills in completely with a solid color, and that way you know you can't go back into the room. Right. It's pretty simple stuff, in all honesty. Once you finish all the rooms on a level, you will complete that level and go to the next level. You've got 4 levels to complete and a total of 36 treasures to get. And when you complete a level, or I think also when you die, the treasure screen will come up and it shows you how many treasures you've got.
Right.
It also shows your guy get out the staircase like he's descending into the...
Yeah, because it's like you're keep going down the tower or up the tower, whichever way you want to think about
it. That's right. Now, there's a goodly amount of monsters in this, Brent. They had skeletons, goblins. They had demons.
Yep.
They had like witches, basically. You know, kind of. They had just a stuff you can't quite identify.
And the hall monsters look really good.
The hall monsters are creepy looking. You know, and the rooms they're not random. Like these levels are. They're generated every time exactly the same way.
Yeah, it's a static environment.
And each room has a name, which is cool. So, like, you know, it's usually something like skeleton room or serpent room or something like that. Now, something else you're gonna run into occasionally are going to be trap rooms. It's generally something with like moving walls.
Yeah. With
a treasure that you have to obtain. Now, all these don't have monsters; they're trapped. Now, unlike a berserk or a frenzy. In this, you can and have to touch the walls. Yes. You got to slide your way in there to get these treasures. And the funny thing about these trap rooms is when you go in them, you're still on the clock, and it can be sort of difficult to navigate in to get those. And that's what they're counting on. That's what makes it trickier.
Yeah, definitely the first time you walk into a trap room that you've never seen before, you're like, okay, how do I get to this? Because it looks very, very difficult.
Absolutely.
Once you figure the trap rooms out, they are by far the easiest ones, but the first time you come across them, it can be very tricky.
Yeah, and like you said, after a while, I've never found them too difficult since I've done it plenty of times. But they got
especially the first few.
I got a little trickier. So once you complete all the rooms, you've beat the skeletons, you've beat the demons, you beat the spiders, you beat everything, and you've collected all the treasure. The game doesn't end. No. It just basically keeps winging you through until you die.
Yeah,
that's pretty much
classic arcade fashion.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, but it's still for an arcade game. I remember when this came out, and I liked it. I think I loved it for a while. I've gotten used to it now, but at the time as a D&D guy, I was like, holy smokes. Look at this. It's just like it's sort of like if you pretend it's like D&D.
Yeah.
You're going to this dungeon. I'll tell you what I didn't like. I never really liked the hall monster thing because I thought it was kind of a cheap way to get killed. Because as you go through the levels, the hall monsters get a little more
way faster.
Yeah. And they're always up in your area. And when you get killed in the hall, you feel like an idiot.
Yeah.
You really don't accomplish anything. Yeah. If you get killed in a room, well, you can just go back in there but you still start back in the hall.
Yeah.
Your guy goes back down the stairs and goes back into the hall. It's pretty much rinse and repeat. When you are in the room and you're firing, you can fire at a pretty good clip. Controls are pretty tight. And it's not that difficult to aim. It would have been cool to have like Robotron controls. But I mean, it's not like you're facing hundreds of enemies.
Right.
The rooms will have 3 or 4 enemies, or they're not. It's not like there's like 30 enemies. It's less than Berserk, but more than one. Let's just go there.
Also, I think conceptually wise, if you're thinking Robotron controls, you can't really run forwards and then shoot across a bow and arrow behind you. So yeah. I can understand why that was never even considered. I think for me, one thing I really loved about this game is when you're at the map screen, the overview screen, to pick which room you want to go into, you have control over that. And that was pretty special for arcade games back then, that you had control over what room you wanted to go into. Now, in the end, you have to visit all the rooms, so it's not anything super special. But that sort of freedom was very unique back in the day.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Another game this reminds me of is I played a game called 005 all the time that has the same kind of go into a room concept, but in that you're a burglar trying to steal secrets and the cops are after you. And it actually has less stages and less variety than this. But I always thought being able to go into the room that you want to go in was a neat feature.
I agree. And the freedom aspect can't be overstated. I've talked about this on Amigos. When back in the day, and in the arcade especially, you didn't feel like it was very tightly controlled. You went across the bottom of the screen. So when you actually got to go free roam, it was very, very interesting. Something you didn't often get to do in the arcade.
Absolutely.
Now, this game was pretty popular in the arcade. I saw it all the time in arcades. I saw it everywhere. It was one of those games I'd see at Sears Arcade. I'd see it at the Gold Mine. I'd see it everywhere. So they sold quite a few of these. Now, just like you would expect, this thing got ported to the home systems. Now, you got to recall, this came out in early '81.
Yeah.
They had this thing good to go in '82. They were converting stuff. They'd already converted it over to ColecoVision in 2600, and eventually they ended up making an Intellivision version as well. Now, the Atari version is a solid version. The
2600 version is amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's very good. I will say though that this game really got popular on the ColecoVision, and it was one of Exidy's. Exidy had a run of hits on the ColecoVision. This was amongst them, including Mousetrap and Pepper 2. Those were both real popular games on the ColecoVision, and they were well received. And probably a couple of those, I bet that those 3 games are probably in the top 10 of most favorite ColecoVision people for a lot of, for games for a lot of people.
The timing was perfect.
Yeah, they did a good job.
The ColecoVision was just coming out, and these games were still fresh enough to get in there early and draw people in. So it was good for the system and good for the company.
We often talk of these crazy awards from back in the 80s, and this game received the Certificate of Merit in the category Best Arcade to Home Game Translation at the 4th Annual ARGs. Gotta love the ARGs. It's just great. It was also noted that in creative computing video and arcade games, as a mouthful, ColecoVision's venture is just as enjoyable as the arcade. It's very close. It's very close. I tried to find who made the translation for the Coleco, and I could not find it. Coleco games are almost entirely untraceable as to who made them. I think a lot of them were made in Japan, but that's just a guess. And that's what I've heard.
That's
anyway.
Very sad. I'm glad that era of gaming is over, where you can't find out who developed or who translated a game or who brought it to a console. Living in that void, I'm glad those years are done. You don't have to Easter egg your credits in.
So you dug this one then?
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. Do you still like it?
I do. Like I said, there are other games of this type that I think I like a little bit more, maybe just because I'm more familiar with them. But the 2600 port to this has always amazed me. I thought they did a really nice translation of this because the 2600, you could only do so much, and I really thought this was a good translation of it.
Honestly, I've played only the 2600 version and the Coleco. I've never played the Intellivision, but I agree with you.
Well, you played the arcade, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Of course, I played it in the arcade, and I will say that this game wasn't the hardest to translate. I mean, it's got the sound is good, but the graphics are pretty pedestrian.
But there's a lot. There's a lot of sprites.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different monster types that you have to put in there. So I think it's pretty good.
We got a user review from our good buddy, our man on the street, Graham W. Vedke. He writes, I had previously played this on the 2600, but decided to try the ColecoVision version, and it's light years better.
It is.
The game reminds me a lot of Berserk, but I think this is actually more fun and challenging. Your character is looking for treasure inside rooms, and you can shoot the enemies, but they die and you can't pass through them. You need to complete all the rooms on a level to advance to the next level, and to move between rooms is a maze-like challenge as well. The controls are a bit sluggish, and aiming isn't like Robotron. It's funny how I mentioned that too. But that is my only fault in this game. 9 out of 10.
Yeah. Now, and one other thing to mention about when you shoot an enemy, as Aaron said, it doesn't disappear, but it will decay over time.
Yeah.
Unless you shoot it again. If you re-kill it, it actually restarts the decay timer. So that's actually really annoying, because when you're in a high-pressure situation and the hall monsters are coming after you, you're trying to get out of the room, and a body won't disappear, it can actually add a lot of tension.
And you don't want to sit around waiting for these things to decay, because you're on a very fixed time.
Yeah.
And one thing you can do accidentally is kill these guys too close to the treasure and really cause yourself a lot of heartache.
Then you're just sitting and waiting.
Yeah, it can be a real problem. But no, I like this game. I played it a lot more on the ColecoVision than I did in the arcade. And there were some, like I know the Coco had a clone of this. I'm sure there were other clones.
Yeah.
But again, it was such an easy game to make. But it was clever, and actually it was a good game, and it was sort of outside their wheelhouse generally.
Oh, absolutely.
But it was one of their biggest hits. I had a chance to look to see what these were going for. If you want the Intellivision version, you're in for $18. That's boxed. ColecoVision box is $21. You can get the 2600 box for $8. Now, if you want to buy the arcade machine, and we come from a time where these things were you couldn't give them away.
Yeah.
You are going to be looking at the guys I saw wanted around $4,000.
That's way high.
I think you could probably get it for half
that.
If you looked around, maybe even less.
Yeah.
But video games, arcade games on the whole, have gone so insane that it's almost impossible. I mean, it's insane what they go for.
If you're willing to take one in okay to poor condition, you can save an entire ton of cash.
I agree. And so now, as I mentioned, this was a game that had a very successful home port. Now, Brent, you chose a game whose home port was not quite as well known.
No, in fact, I chose a game that Venture is sort of the highlight, the peak of their existence. Maybe not financially, but the times were still rolling high.
Yeah.
I picked a game when they were really at their low point, and I picked Chiller. Chiller, for those that don't know, is an arcade. You've probably never seen it in the arcade, although it was released in the arcade. Due to its graphic content, making it virtually unreleasable in the arcade.
Yeah.
And I want to go into a little bit of history of that. You mentioned Death Race.
Yes.
And how it gained notoriety through the media, through news outlets, as being controversial.
Yeah.
And Exidy really was able to build off that. They were able to take that buzz and turn it into profit by selling those cabinets. Because the cabinets, while it caused a lot of uproar, it did not. Those things weren't so bad that you couldn't have them in an arcade. That was in the beginning of their life. This Chiller was at the end. And Chiller, they had the developer working with art programs. And he had a scene up with humans splayed out in different like torture poses, like bent over or tied to a rack. And he was drawing to see how much capacity he could squeeze into these motherboards, because like we mentioned in the beginning, these are motherboards that they've been using forever, and they were trying to get a little more life out of them. And he was playing graphically to see what he could get on here, real big sprites and all that stuff. And the boss walked by, and the boss was like, "That's it." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "That's the new game. We've got to do this. We have got to take this concept and stretch it into a game." And he was like, this is nothing. This is just, kind of almost grotesque art. And they said, we need you to push the envelope and really make a splash out there with this. So they took the concept, and those two art scenes that he had drawn are the art scenes in the game, the very first two rooms, the torture room and the rack room. And for those that aren't familiar, these are scenes of torture on humans, helpless, chained up humans, and they are tied to racks. They are heads in vices. They are in guillotines. They are above rivers of blood. They slowly lower a human in as they are eaten alive by crocodiles.
Oh yeah,
it's brutal, and it's disturbing. It's disturbing content, and I'm not talking even Mortal Kombat layers of kind of silliness where you might kill someone and 18 femurs pop out. You know,
that was over the top violence.
I mean,
this was realistic violence.
Mortal Kombat had the more realistic graphics, but Chiller had the more realistic gore.
Yeah.
And when I say that, it had chopped off limbs, it had muscle tissue, bone,
guts.
It had nudity
Yep.
in the later scenes of the game. And the game itself, when you pull all of that away, is virtually a shooting gallery of the first two scenes are nearly all static images. And when they released this game, they were trying to capture that Death Race press that they had before. And they admit it now. Interviews that you find for developers for this will say, yeah, we were going so far over the top with the express goal to get media attention for outrage. And they didn't get it, which is astounding. But they didn't get it. And what this caused was arcade owners would not buy the game because it was too grotesque and it was too laden with nudity and gore that they passed on it. And that was really the beginning of the end for the company. They only released, I think, 2 or 3 games after Chiller because they had put all their eggs into this controversial basket and it bore no fruit at all. I know that you've played through Chiller, and there are other aspects of the game, and I put game really in air quotes because it's really tacked on things. It says like, oh, can you find all the hidden objects? And you might have to shoot a brick to reveal a key, and then you shoot the key and you found the hidden object.
A lot of it's just like you know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
Remember when you used to get Highlights magazine? They'd have those picture searches.
Yes.
And so there'd be a huge crazy picture, and you'd have to find the flower and the tree. This thing, you have to find for the first level, it's a lot of head on a pole. You have to shoot the guy's head, shoot the girl's head, smash the dude's head, find the skull. And when you shoot all these clues, after you finish the screen, there's like a clue, sort of like Venture, where instead of treasure, you've got all the clues that you found are gone, revealing a haunted house.
Right. And
when you clear all that, you get to go to the haunted house stage.
Right.
Which is
and it's a clay pigeon. Yeah, it's a clay pigeon bonus stage. And something else to mention, because you've got your gore, you've got your nudity. Well, you got to have some gambling in there too.
Yeah.
In between scenes, you shoot a slot machine with a chance to win a free game or bonus points.
That's right, and it's literally it's the easiest, lamest thing. I mean, you just sit there and watch it spin and time it, and then you get your prize. It's not really much of anything.
It's nothing.
It's a tack on.
It's literally because it doesn't fit with the theme. Saying there is a theme. I mean, the theme is supposed to be horror movies, but this isn't horror movies. This is more gore and guts than you'll find even in like the Final Destinations or the Saw movies.
Yeah.
Because it's all just torture.
There's a movie called Blood-Sucking Freaks. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
It's about this like real evil guy named, I think his name was Sadhu, and he has this like house full of like prisoners, and he uses women like furniture. He's got a beautiful ballerina that dances around. So at one point he gets sick of her and cuts her feet off. The rest of the movie, you see her dragging herself around in the background. It's a real torture movie, idiot. That if you're gonna base a game on that movie, which this sort of reminds me of that, it's the same kind of vein. It's that there's horror movie, then there's just stupidity, like violent stupidity. Yeah, that's what this is. Like one thing that bothers me about this game, let's take, and you're dead on. The game here is lacking. Let's take the video out, the pictures, the torture, all stuff. In most of the light gun games from these guys, the goal is to protect someone walking across the screen, like a Crossbow or Cheyenne, and it's fun. It makes you, and you're trying to protect these people as they go by. Like a Crossbow, you're shooting buzzards or whatever, Indians, or whatever, trying to keep these people safe. And in this game, you don't do any of that.
Nope.
And in fact, the people on the screen, you're trying to hurt them.
Yeah.
Now, I believe I read that they had tried to retcon this violence by saying these people were all evil prisoners or something.
No. That was for the Nintendo release that I'll get into. But the arcade version had none of that. These were just people.
And I mean, but the people aside, it's almost like a target shoot. It's nothing, and not a good one. I mean, if you want to play something good, like a target shooting game that's good, play like Carnival or something.
Yes.
Where this is just a wanton idiot violence, and with no fun. And what's sad to me is once you get past the first two, the torture chamber level and the river of blood level,
the rack,
the third level of this is like this long hallway, and there's this beautiful woman that walks out, and I thought to myself, this is where you protect this woman. And and then stuff comes out of the wall, so it looks like something you'd find in Exidy's Crossbow type game.
Yes,
but it's the same, more of the same. But you've got the basis. I mean, they could have made a game. Hey, listen, they made the same game a bunch of times. If you're gonna make a monster movie version, that's cool. I'd be down with that. But don't change the way you play it to be this stupid.
Yeah.
And then once you beat the last two levels, if you've cleared all the clues, you get to play the like you said, it was almost like a clay pigeon trap shoot sort of level where you're in front of this haunted house, and it looks good. Once you get past there's 4 main levels. You've got your torture chamber. Stop me if I'm wrong here. You get the blood river, right? You've got the hallway, and you've got the graveyard. And of course, you've got the idiotic slot machine.
Yeah.
And then you've got the final level where you've unveiled that haunted house and you fight in front of it. That's pretty cool. It looks cool. It's not fun.
Okay.
And so you've got 4 unfun levels, a couple of which are so unfun and unattractive, they literally make you want to turn it off.
Yeah.
Not good.
And this was that. In fact, the reason why they put the torture room and the rack room as the first 2 levels is their motto for this game is, if we can't get their attention in the first 30 seconds, they're not going to stick around.
Oh, God.
But this,
they got attention, all right.
Well, no, they didn't. That's the thing. No one cared. Everyone saw this for what it was. It was gore for the sake of gore, and it got no traction. Now, it did get an unofficial Nintendo port. And that is when they tried to retcon the story. This was not put out by Exidy. It was put out by another company. And they were like, oh, the people in the castle are bad and you must punish them for their evil. No, that's crap. It was all, and it was, like I said, it was very much an unofficial Nintendo release, because Nintendo would never let this garbage on their system.
Even if they were bad, what's the fun in this?
No,
they're already being tortured. Why do I have to be involved?
It's no good, guys. Don't waste your time on this one. Even if you're curious, don't waste your time. Prices for these, from my understanding, all of these were conversion kits, which means they were take your crossbow or your Cheyenne or something like that and make it into a chiller game.
We think the gun in this is the same one in Chamber, but I can't be 100% sure with that.
But the systems that have been converted into chiller machines are running about $3,500. Or you can get the NES version of the game in box for about $120.
And I never saw this anywhere near an arcade. No. Can you imagine someone approaching an arcade owner with this?
No.
And no one in their right mind would put this in an arcade unless it was like if it was a seedy bar or something. I see some R-rated games when I go to a club or bar, usually something like that, a Playboy game or whatever. And there's even I played a Playboy released I think it was Sterner released a Playboy machine. And it had straight up nudity as you played it. It's a good machine, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It's a solid machine.
And so I did see that in arcades a couple times. But this was so past the
over the top,
through the veil and out the door that no one would in their right mind. I can't imagine this being put in an arcade.
No.
Graham W. Vepke sent in a review for Chiller. Okay, this game, I get why there is controversy about it, but it follows a successful Exidy shooting formula, and I do recall playing Combat and Cheyenne in the arcades. Anyway, this is effectively a target shooting gore game where you shoot already tortured people, spooky creatures, skulls, etc. I get this might attract people into horror movies at that time, particularly with the sounds, but the gimmick grew old quickly for me. I had to play this game with a mouse and MAME, and it's a lot easier than playing it with a light gun. However, I don't think this has as much longevity as some of the other Exidy shooting titles, 6.5 out of 10.
And I think that's very generous. I don't think there's enough gameplay to even give it like a 3.
I honestly wish that they would have used this engine and maybe some of the screens from this to do something that was more in line with their other stuff.
Crossbows.
I think a horror game, if you think about it, protecting someone in a mansion or something from horror stuff, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be.
As opposed to whatever the heck this is. Absolute debacle.
Yes. You know what else is cool, Aaron?
What's that?
It's the wheel.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes it's a debacle. All right, Brent, do you remember what we put on the wheel this time around?
I believe it was something to do with a text adventure. What was it, Aaron?
It was the Intex Adventure Vision.
That's the one.
We're just talking to somebody about this. It's fresh on my mind. Give her a whirl, Dilly.
Gotta warm it up here. Oh man, I keep missing the mark. There we go. It all came out.
Try not to wind it so hard you actually physically have pieces flying in every direction.
We got. Oh, let me see what we got here.
What do we got there, Franny?
Looks like the Dragon 32/64.
All right, now we covered the Coco a while back. This is its European cousin.
Yes.
I've been dying. This was my idea to put this one on the wheel. I've been dying to have a go at some specific Dragon games. I already got a couple in mind that I'm looking forward to trying out. Before we cut and run, the Brent has an exciting announcement. As you know, we just finished up or wrapped up Amigathon 2019 last weekend. Brent, we raised, after it was all said and done, the dust settled. I believe we raised $3,225.
Yes, I do believe that is correct.
And we as usual, grossly underestimated what we'd get this year. And I'd like to thank the community for their generosity.
Clappy.
It's a lovely thing to be able to give that kind of money to the Children's Miracle Network. They're helping the kids, and I always underestimate the incredible generosity of our listeners and the Amiga community as a whole, and to some extent the ARG community. And we appreciate your efforts and your time. And even if you didn't or couldn't give a dime, we just appreciate you showing up every week or joining us.
Spreading the word.
We had a real good turnout for the Amigathon.
Yes.
Brent was there for the whole. He was
almost
right there in it for pretty much the whole time, and as a occasional co-host of the Amigos, you were in good form that day with your Amiga knowledge. And Brent, much like myself, grew up with an Amiga. He knows exactly what's going on. So, with all that said, Brent, what do you have under your hat this week?
In late November, date to be formally announced, we are going to have a Thanks for Giving spectacular to give back to our community. For those who donated to the charity, and for those who donate to us through Patreon, we are going to have a 10-hour marathon, thus wrapping up the 24 hours of promised goodness from, I guess, that's required by law every year now.
Yeah, we went 14 hours on the Amigathon this year. So.
Yeah, so we're going to have 10 hours of games or systems that you want us to play. The way we see this going down is we're going to contact you in the coming weeks through Patreon and say, hey, would you like to make a suggestion for the wheel? And we're going to take all these suggestions and put them on the wheel. It can be things we've already done before. It can be systems we've already done before, categories, anything you want. Anything
pretty much
you
all
would like
bets
to
are
see.
off. Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
And we're going to put those suggestions on the wheel, spin them, play them for 20, 30, 40 minutes, however the time works out. And it is not going to be asking for money. We're not going to be asking for donations or Patreon support. We're just doing this as a thank you to you for supporting us and our charity throughout the years.
And of course, if you're a fine person who just tunes in every week and you're not a patron, that's okay.
Please come anyway. Yes.
Thanks for Giving Spectacular will be streamed just like we stream everything on
Absolutely.
YouTube. So anyone can watch, and the chat room will be open, and it should be fun. And once we get finished with one suggestion and it spins on the wheel, we'll toss that one off, and we'll put in another one, and we'll do it until pretty much we run out of suggestions, or we get to the end of the thing, and we'll just do whatever's left.
That's
so everyone will get their shot. It's a matter of when. But it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to do it right here in Amiga Studios. We'll probably have the boat will be joining us for a little while, and we'll sit down and play some classic consoles, maybe some newer stuff, some computers, some arcade games. Really, it'll be up to you, the viewer or listener, that in terms of what systems or that you would like to see us delve into. We'll grab something we know works.
Genre of game.
Yeah, we'll go.
It can be anything.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So we're announcing it early just to get the cat out of the bag. And we'll be more details and more formality on it will be coming in the next few months. We've got plenty of time.
Absolutely.
So next week, Brent, Dragon 32.
Yes.
Should be a lot of fun.
Should be a good one.
Hey, thanks for tuning in this week. We should be back on our normal streaming schedule next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And we hope to see you there.
Yes.
Thanks again. And until then, avoid the dark.
Thank you.